first voting state on the Republican primary calendar shows Donald Trump is still the person to beat, but there is potential for some movement. For the numbers, let's bring in NBC News national political correspondent Steve Kornacki at the big board with the latest. Steve, what do you got?
Yeah, this is an exciting new venture for NBC. We've partnered with the Des Moines Register. The Des Moines Register does its polling with Ann Selzer. This is the absolute gold standard poll of the first in the nation caucus state. And so we've seen all of these numbers about national polling in this Republican race. But as you say, it all starts in Iowa. And the theory of every candidate who's trying to beat Donald Trump is that they can win Iowa, get traction in Iowa, and take that slingshot to the next wave of primaries and to the nomination. So the Iowa polling we have been missing all summer, high quality Iowa polling. Well, right now we've got the gold standard to unveil to you. This again from Ann Selzer, part of our partnership, a new one with the Des Moines Register. These are the numbers here. This is the bottom line in terms of asking likely caucus goers who they would support right now. Trump is well ahead, more than 2-1, 42%. Ron DeSantis, the only challenger in double digits. He's at 19%. Tim Scott, just under 10%. You see Nikki Haley, Mike Pence, Chris Christie. You go all the way down to Will Hurd at 1%. So Trump with that sizable lead here in Iowa. Looking inside the numbers a little bit, evangelical voters in particular. In 2016, remember, Donald Trump did not win evangelical voters in the Iowa caucuses in 2016. He didn't win the Iowa caucuses, in fact, in 2016. Ted Cruz did. But among evangelicals now in this poll, Trump is at 47%, nearly 50% of evangelicals backing Donald Trump. 2/3, roughly, of all Iowa caucus goers in 2016 identified as evangelicals. This is a huge voting block in the Iowa caucuses. There's Trump at 47%. And by the way, there's Mike Pence, who has built his political career in large part on ties to evangelical Christians. He's at 6% with evangelicals, and his unfavorable rating, 51% with evangelical voters in Iowa. That's Pence, who obviously has taken his share of heat from Donald Trump over his actions on January 6th. Asking Iowa Republicans here, has Trump committed serious crimes? Only 26% believe so. 65%, nearly 2/3, say he's not committed serious crimes. Very interesting tidbit. This poll was conducted sort of between the news coming out of Georgia last week of the latest Trump indictment. The portion of the poll that was conducted before that news broke had Donald Trump leading in Iowa over Ron DeSantis by 18 points. The portion of the poll that was conducted after the news of the latest indictment broke had Donald Trump's lead swelling to 25 points. So again, you do see that rally around Trump effect that seems to take hold with each one of these indictments. You saw that in this poll. Also, historically here, Trump leading by 23 points. The Des Moines Register poll is one that has a rich history going all the way back to the 1980s. These are Republicans at this point. These are Republican races at this point in the cycle. Who's had a lead comparable to Donald Trump's 23 points? Well, George W. Bush back in the 2000 cycle, he led by 27 at this point. He ended up winning by 11. Bob Dole, they called him the president of Iowa for a while. In 96, he was up 46 points at this point. He won in 96, but only by 3 points in the caucuses. So there's an example where a big lead shrank dramatically. And then you do have some examples here of candidates who led at this point and ended up losing. Their leads weren't as big as Trump is right now. But if somebody is going to make a move and catch Trump in Iowa, who might that be? One way of looking at it is this. Ask about the favorable, unfavorable ratings of these different candidates. And I think a couple things are notable. DeSantis may be 23 points behind Trump, but DeSantis actually has the best margin here on favorable, unfavorable. There's 66% of Republicans in Iowa have a favorable view of DeSantis, 29 unfavorable. Trump's number is very strong. It's stronger than it was for Trump in 16, but DeSantis is a touch higher. Tim Scott, extremely popular too. Nikki Haley, popular as well. Notably, Chris Christie, who's gone the hardest after Donald Trump, extremely negative. Mike Pence, 42-53 negative. So right now, if you're looking at somebody who might be able to make a run at Trump in Iowa, maybe, it's most likely a DeSantis. It could be Scott, maybe a Nikki Haley. When we ask voters, in fact, who their second choice is, it's spread out. DeSantis gets the highest second choice total, but Tim Scott's right there with 15% as well. Vivek Ramaswamy, by the way, at 12%. So the problem for DeSantis, not only is he 23 points behind, he's very well liked still by Republicans in Iowa. But right now, it's not as if he is the default second choice of all of those voters in Iowa. And one other interesting number I think we can show you here. We just asked voters in Iowa, what's most important to you, going with a candidate who's closest to your views or electability, a candidate who can beat Biden? And you see about 2/3 said closest to their views on the issues. Interesting split here. The ones saying closest to their views on the issues, Trump with a massive lead there of 30 points. Those looking at electability, Trump leads, but DeSantis is within 10. Scott's in double digits. So the more the Iowa Republican voters focus on that question of electability, that's where Trump starts to get into a closer contest here with his opponent. So, yes, overall, a very big lead for Donald Trump in Iowa, one that historically has portended good things for candidates in that position. But you do see rivals here in Iowa, notably DeSantis, notably Scott, to some degree Haley, who are still very well known and very well liked by Republicans. And we have more than half Republicans in this poll saying their minds not made up yet.
That is fascinating. Of course, you look at that 96 drop by Bob Dole. I mean, wow, that was a precipitous drop. Also, Mitt Romney coming back from behind, a good bit from behind. So Steve Caddy K has a question for you. But Caddy, I just have to say, you look at those numbers. He gets indicted with 19 co-conspirators and this RICO charges. He's on tape lying about, trying to rig the election. And you've got the Republican leaders of Georgia, not left-wingers, the Republican leaders of Georgia telling voters he's a liar, saying, no, the election wasn't rigged. They win in the Republican primary there in a landslide. But what happens in this poll? Again, facts don't matter. Again, we don't know what the exact definition of a cult is. And that's for people other than us to determine whether this is, in fact, a cult. But my gosh, certainly it is bizarre that facts just don't matter, that actually his numbers go up after he's indicted in a multi-count criminal indictment to steal an election.
Yeah, it's a feature of kind of populism, and it has been for the last decade or so, but has grown more so, that we are in an era of purist politics, not pragmatic politics. And I thought it was so interesting, that question about, do you want somebody who shares your views? Is that more important to you? Or are you going to vote pragmatically and try and vote for somebody who actually could be elected and beat Joe Biden? And a 2/3 majority say, no, what matters to me is the purism of Donald Trump's, what he's offering, the kind of the populism. And I think, that's where the Iowa voters are at the moment. I loved the history, Steve. Are we going to be 96 and see a kind of Bob Dole style lead kind of evaporate? Or is this going to be more like 2000 and see George W. Bush maintaining his lead better? I mean, that's super interesting. And I don't know, does the polling throw in all of those Democrats who might be sitting home on Iowa caucus night thinking, actually, you know what, I'm kind of bored. I miss the civic tradition of going to the caucuses. I'm going to go along and muddy the waters and vote for some Republican that I like. Have we seen any indication of whether that might happen and how many Democrats might turn out and vote in the Republican caucuses?
Well, the one thing that we did look at, and I don't have the graphic to show you here, but independents. We did ask about independents potentially deciding to participate in the caucuses, and that's actually where both Trump and DeSantis did the worst. It's just a very small share of the overall pie there. But yeah, when you start broadening it out to independents, that again, it gets to you find it more likely for voters to say they have concerns about Trump and electability, Trump and committing crimes, those sorts of things. So, and again, it's interesting too. You saw that briefly in the polling coming out of the November midterm. It seems like ancient history now, but there was all sorts of polling, some national, some state level in December of last year, January, February this year, where Trump's lead, again, national, state level, was not that massive. It's actually grown since February or March of this year, really since those indictments began. Remember, the first indictment came in New York City, in Manhattan. That was the first of this wave. And if you had a trend line here, I could show you, but Trump's lead has just grown since that first indictment. So it was almost like there was a rally around Trump effect that was kind of kicked in there. And yeah, you do wonder when you look at this historically. I mean, I remember that 96 one. It was actually Pat Buchanan who came in second place there, just 3 points behind Bob Dole. And then Buchanan went on and won New Hampshire a week later. Again, that's the theory of any of these candidates running against Trump. It's that Iowa's the kind of state where retail politics still works, where you can spend months doing events with 50, 100, 200 people. You can build support that way. And if you can win Iowa, you can roll it into the subsequent states. I think the question here again is, you look at how well liked DeSantis is, how well liked Scott is, to some degree, how well liked Haley is. Can one of them consolidate support in the next few months? And that might get to what's at stake in this debate coming up this week. Can one of them consolidate support, move up within striking distance of Trump in Iowa, and really try to make it effectively a two-person race there? Because if that's the case, you can start to see in these numbers a scenario where it could get interesting.
When I was watching it, it was such a cope that they bring on the, I'm going to just call him a nerd or geeky guy. I forget his name. But he brings them on. This is their whole guy. Yeah. This is Steve. This is his name. Steve Kornacki. Steve Kornacki. That's his name. Now that I know him, he's not a nerd. I don't mean that in a demeaning way. We call ourselves a nerd, or Nick calls himself a nerd too. So he comes on, gets them the numbers, and it's devastating numbers. It's literally devastating numbers because it'll be like you, Nick, your parents bringing you in to the kitchen and saying, "Hey," and on the projector they're going through your report card and it's all F's, because that's essentially when you're seeing polling and it's not working. That's their understanding. Wow, our polling is not working. That's why they're moving to saying this has to be a cult. Is this like some sort of cult? Because they don't understand why their vigorous propaganda is having zero effect. They don't get it. So it is very shocking. And so that Cope video was very, it's very soothing to watch for me. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's a lot of Cope, and Democrats are having a hard time figuring out how to attack Trump on this debate, because I've seen MSNBC, CNN, a few people attempt to say, "Oh, Trump is a coward because he can't debate." The smarter propagandists have been avoiding that because they know that Biden is doing the same exact thing to RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson. And we explain on this show, we don't think those are serious movement building potential campaigns. But if I'm principled, I do believe that Biden should debate his primary challengers. I think Biden should debate RFK and Marianne. RFK, with his 18 to 20%, I think he dropped recently to like 15%, but he's around the same number as Ron DeSantis. Marianne Williamson is around the same number as Chris Christie, but CNN and MSNBC pretend Chris Christie is a threat to Donald Trump. Chris Christie, just like Marianne Williamson and Biden, is zero threat to Donald Trump at all. Now, I'm gonna take it the other way here, because I explained that before. We all know how liberals are desperate. But wouldn't you guys want to see, because once again, I'm a nerd, would you guys want to see Trump debate Chris Christie on Ukraine? Right? I'm watching the debate. That's the only thing I'm interested in seeing. I'm interested in the Ukraine.
That would be interesting.
Debate. So we gave Joe Biden a lot of shit. We gave Nancy Pelosi a lot of shit for refusing to debate. So why are people letting Trump off the hook? This is cowardly shit. Let's be real. You afraid to debate Ron DeSantis? You afraid to debate Chris Christie? He's like, well, I got no reason to. He's like, we got no political reason. I always see Trump supporters saying, we got no political reason to. That's the same thing Nancy Pelosi says. Nancy Pelosi says there's no reason to why she had to debate Shahid Buttar because Shahid Buttar is not a legitimate challenger. That's the same thing Trump is saying right now. Trump sounds exactly like Nancy Pelosi right now. And Trump supporters are letting him off the hook. And then people will side. They were like, oh my God, Tucker Carlson about interview Trump. I don't give a fuck about that, fam. Can I ask another question? Why is Tucker Carlson getting off the hook? Why is he let off the hook for giving softball interviews and softball questions to these politicians running for president? Because I promise you, fam, I have no interest in watching it, because Tucker Carlson is going to give Trump a softball interview. CJ, we get grilled whenever there's any appearance of us being soft on politicians. Other people get grilled for being soft on politicians. But Tucker Carlson been doing a softball marathon on his new X show, his new Twitter show. He have all these presidential candidates on, not asking them any hard questions. They're like, we're gonna come on, just talk about shit we agree with. So we'll see, but I highly doubt that Tucker Carlson is gonna ask Donald Trump about Julian Assange, for example. Your mind would change about Julian Assange. So are you gonna ask him about it? Let's see if he does.
You know what? With
yeah,
mainstream media. What mainstream media, New York Times, I believe, and Washington Post, or one of the other main, they are advocating for Julian Assange to be released. So he may shift, actually. Now that he's been given a cue because they don't really want a trial, Nick, because there's a certain thing called discovery. So this thing you guys are prosecuting on, what did he steal? Let's see it, guys. They don't want to focus on that, Nick. So, I don't know if he would change his mind, but I definitely know that the ruling class has given the yellow light. Let's not say green light. They definitely have allowed these corporate media sort of fake news outlets to project like they're for press freedom by now shifting and asking for his release. But I thought that video was a great video to start with, just to show a little cope.